how to disrupt them big powerful barriers keeping you stuck. Some interesting things that you have probably seen before, but maybe looked at it a bit differently, which I think is the key to a lot of things that's keeping us stuck here.
Yes, it would appear that I am stuck.
We tend to put quite a bit of focus on, we as in like when we talk about this stuff, tend to put a lot of focus into what we are thinking and how we are feeling in terms of managing stress, because arguably those are the most important aspects of managing stress, okay? Starting from the bottom up, right? What are we thinking and feeling? Because those end up cultivating the biological responses that end up working us up. However, sometimes it also works out okay to go from the top down. That is to say, to do things that calm us down and get our head straight enough to then focus on what the heck we are thinking and how that sways our emotions, which then makes it easier to do dumb stuff. Though sometimes it does work out okay to go from the top down. Scheduling and self-monitoring is incredibly important because it's a simple and effective way to take a more global perspective on how we make choices, specifically how the choices we have or we make have an impact on our thoughts, feelings, actions, and therefore stress levels. When starting at TKN, as clients are getting the hang of things, we work with them to figure out just what the heck they're doing right now. After all, right now is a result of back then and will also be resulting in later on. Sometimes it's just food, sometimes it's just sleep, sometimes it's general activity. There's some type of time study, perhaps, just like you go to a sleep physician for them to do a sleep study, we can do time study. And you end up getting pretty interesting stuff, just like you might see during a sleep study, although I argue that time studies are much more effective. Typically, we focus on nutrition because people eat multiple times per day and then use it as a way to break up their day into chunks kind of naturally. So we hit multiple birds with one stone there by just putting the self-monitoring aspect on the nutrition side of things first. Then at the end of each week and on your own, it's worth it to do at the end of each day, just write a short note, right? So back to the expressive writing technique about how the week went, what went well, what to focus on next week even more, and overall mood each day and throughout the week and so on. As you do this, you'll start seeing what about your days was good? What about your crummy days were so crummy? What days you felt best physically and what days your attitude was best? Soon it becomes apparent that as you start paying attention to what's going on in your life, rather than just being a passenger and letting things happen to you and then cursing the frustration gods as it occurs, you start taking this information and using it to your advantage, right? So where change begins, where helplessness fades, right? And responsibility emerges. This is the strongest, most effective technique to make that happen for yourself. To manipulate your exposure to frustrating stimuli, to think about it rationally, responding to it deliberately, and stacking up more and more constructive outcomes. Even the people that claim to be the busiest, they have open chunks of time that are ripe for activities that are threefold. They're distracting, fun, and growth-oriented. Building a skill, for instance. A person watching something could just as easily be using that time to write, draw, paint, listen, etc. Do something that Dr. Ellis calls a vital absorbing interest, getting involved in the community in some way. This is a perfect opportunity to do that. It's an opportunity to see that behaviorally the sort of choices being made and how they impact your thoughts, feelings, and actions and stress levels so that you can set yourself up to win. So at TCAN, we encourage people to be their own scientists.
I'm something of a scientist myself.
To start collecting data, looking at that data on purpose and with purpose, and then using that data to inform their decisions, to help them make more smarter choices and fewer dumber choices. It is way more better to make fewer dumber choices and more smarter choices. In other words, we take that self-monitoring and scheduling and we start kicking out the dumb, stressful stuff, okay, and start putting in more smart, fun, growth-oriented stuff. It's difficult for a lot of people to wrap their heads around scheduling stuff that's fun, and the irony is it's their erratic scheduling that's a direct contributor to their lethargy, fatigue, exhaustion, stress, and just overall humbug. They claim to feel restricted. So they claim to feel restricted, right? That it's a stressful, frustrating stimulus by scheduling. So they forego their scheduling or ignore the schedule, okay? And then that tends to prompt them to have outcomes as a result of their impulsive behaviors, okay? Which causes a lot of stress, which then pushes them way even further from the idea of scheduling, okay? Because they hate feeling restricted. But obviously how much they love being slavish to their anxiety-driven impulses, right? Like screens, snacks, squabbling, and scrolling, those 4 S's that are cultivating their misery to begin with. When you obviate a schedule, when you ignore it or neglect it, it prompts a person to act more impulsively, right? That's why they feel stressed. They feel like a chicken with their head cut off going every direction. And so when you start acting impulsively, you shrink that space between stimulus and response. You're more likely to act impulsively. And when you're more likely to act impulsively, you're more likely to do dumb stuff instead of smart stuff, which then reinforces the dire need to avoid feeling so restricted. So it's contradictory to assume that fun things and great times and fulfilling relationships are just supposed to happen on their own and fall from trees, and that putting any effort into any of that stuff defeats the purpose of having it. It's ridiculous levels of humbug to just assume that this sort of stuff should just spontaneously happen on its own. They do take up time, time? Sure. So does all the other stuff that's promoting a person's stress and crappy mood. The time is passing anyway. So it's better to swap the crappy mood stuff with happy mood stuff and stuff that makes you dumber into stuff that makes you smarter. It's okay to have some distractions. It's okay to have some straight up leisure. It's okay to have some stuff that helps us feel connected to others. It's okay to have some stuff that helps us feel connected with ourselves. And it's okay to have some stuff that in a controlled way challenges us and helps us to get better. As you go on, you'll see how you'll get these benefits from activities that you may have, if you've looked at them initially, you'd have laughed out loud and thought even remotely doing that would have been stupid, okay? And maybe it was initially, and then you did it and realized that you got some huge benefits from it. I was just recently cleaning the house of Mrs. Kashey, like deep clean style, right? Was it leisurely or pleasant activity? Hell no. No. However, we got to bond, joke. Dr. Kashey got to annoy her with his theories of teenage angst and sexual frustration and musings about evolutionary biology. And before you know it, the house was spotless and we had a great boost in mood and then had some happy fun marriage time after that. And our house was pretty big, so we got nearly 2 miles worth of steps in and I was able to solve an intellectual problem that had bugged me for months. The only thing I didn't do was ask Mrs. Kashey if it was as good for her as it was for me. I know I had a great time. Boosted my mood, solved all sorts of problems, got all sorts of things done. Thank you so much for learning. Stay rational. Until next time, Dr. Kashey is out.